Hi folks, Matthew Lanigan here with BayWa. We're just going to give everybody another minute or two. I see people are still logging in, so just give us 2 minutes or so and we'll start things up. Thanks so much. Hi folks, Matthew Lanigan here again with BayWa RE. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at BayWa. Just like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to learn a little bit about Fronius today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. This will be recorded, so you'll get a copy in your September newsletter. If you'd like one earlier, you can just reach out to one of the outside sales reps. You'll notice there is a questions box down in the bottom right corner. Please type your questions in. We'll do our best to answer them in real time. If not, there'll be points where we'll take breaks and answer any loose questions. Fronius is a fantastic partner for us here at BayWa, a nice, strong global company with boots on the ground here in Canada with great support and product right here in the country. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bilal Rabat with Fronius Canada. He's the director for the solar energy side.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon for those of us in the eastern part of Canada. Thank you very much for your time today and for joining us, and thank you so much to BayWa for hosting this great webinar. I'm just going to run through things pretty quickly and informally. So if you've got questions for me, don't be shy to ask them. Put them in the Q&A, and Matt can interrupt me, or we can wait till the end, whatever the preference is. Again, it's very easy, laid-back conversation here. No problem at all. So let's jump right into it. As Matt said, we've been around since 1945. Fronius started in Austria. Speaking more locally, we've been in Canada since 2007, and the business unit Solar Energy was established in 2010 in Canada. We're Canadian, we're locally diversified because we've got both of the welding and solar business units in Canada. We've got over 40 Canadian jobs and growing on a regular basis. So we're diversified locally, we're bankable locally, we're invested in the local economy, and we've been around to honor our warranties from within Canada since 2007. Like I said, Fronius Canada's had solar around since 2011, so it's technically 11 years now, to be 12 years soon. And in that time, you know, we had our production team locally here to do domestic content requirements for the FIT program in Ontario, and we've stayed here ever since, working on developing the business unit in Canada. As was alluded to, you know, our technical support is also located in Canada, you know, so we understand the local climate that you are dealing with, the local challenges that you have with inspectors and all those kinds of things, and we're doing our best to support you from a Canadian perspective. Our tech support team is focused exclusively on Canada, so we're not distracted by US or European or anything else technical calls. We're here to support your needs as you need us. One thing that makes us really unique is that, you know, we're responsive on multiple platforms, so you can text us, you can call us, you can email us, and we will be responsive as to the best of our ability. We will also check and respond to voicemails on multiple times a day. And the coolest thing is, if you've got a challenging issue that you want to get resolved right away, say your project location is 4+ hours away, or you've got a very important challenge that needs to be resolved, you can book appointments with our tech support team. So give them a heads up, let them know that you're going to be on site on this day at this time, and they will call you at the number that you specify at that time to make sure that you're getting what you need when you need it, when there's an urgent request. Our vision is 24 hours of sun. We believe the Earth can be powered by 24 hours of renewable energy. And while we can't offer everything on this picture, we're going to do our best to continue supporting this vision and making sure that we can live a more sustainable future. Getting into our products, our primary inverter products are our SIMO, which is 3-phase inverters, available in 10 to 24 kilowatt and 480 volt, and 10 to 15 kilowatt and 208 volt. So for any 208 volt grids out there where you're doing work, this is the ideal product solution for you. It's the largest 208 volt inverter available on the market. There's also the SIMO Advanced, which is the sun spec inverters, which is 15 to 24 kilowatt 480 and 10 to 12 kilowatt 208 volt options. The only difference between SIMO and SIMO Advanced is the Advanced has the sun spec, so if module level shutdown is needed, is required, then it can be accommodated. Otherwise, we recommend going with standard rapid shutdown solutions. We also have our Primo, which is our single phase inverters, and those go from 3.8 up to 8.2 in the smaller size, in the smaller profile, and 10 to 15 kilowatt in the larger size profile. And so those are also the largest single phase inverters available for any larger single phase projects that anyone's working on. The snap inverters, as we call them, the Primo and SIMO, have great mounting options. You can see the picture in the middle is the mounting bracket itself, and there are a number of different connection points for you to attach it to the wall. And you can see all the different things. So there's NEMA 4X. It can be installed on the side, outdoors on the side of a property. It can be installed in sunlight as long as it's under shade or on the, like a north roof, for example. And so it can be installed outdoors, 0 to 45 degrees, so it can be laid down flat or installed up vertically. And the great thing about this is it's rated out of the box to -40 degrees Celsius. So no matter how remote your projects are in Canada, the Fronius inverter is the best solution for you. It will work no matter what the external temperature very well. And so as an example of that, you know, we've got a number of projects in the, like in Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. Some are even, I think, within the Arctic Circle or a few kilometers away from the Arctic Circle. And they give in many times of the year better PV production than projects in Southern Ontario or in other parts of the country. We always recommend, like I said, the inverters can be installed outside, but we always recommend parking it or installing it in the shade. And that's because it's power electronics, and the only thing that will live a longer, healthier life in the sun is basically water and trees. Nothing else likes to be in the sun. So the example I always give is if you can choose to park your car in the garage or in the driveway, what would be your choice? And the answer is always in the garage. And so that goes the same for any power electronics, whether it's an inverter or anything else. One thing that comes up a lot with our inverters is how can we reduce yield losses caused by shading? And so we have just the answer for you. First, we'll go into basically max power point tracking. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically just tracking the production curve to maximize the output in kilowatts of the inverter. But when you're looking at a local max power point tracker, which is what most inverters have, you can get caught on the local max power point and not actually track the global max power point when there's a shade going by or something. And so what the global max power point tracker does is it sweeps the entire production curve to find the global max power point to get the maximum PV output possible out of the array. And so we can enable this in our inverters with the dynamic peak manager. So you can see here as the shade goes by on the module, very slowly, the production goes down in kilowatts. And then the production will increase. So what it's basically doing is mitigating shading issues by providing more potential power coming out of the array. And so any issues that you have with shading, basically entirely removed with the enablement of the dynamic peak manager. It's already inside all of the inverters that we sell, so there should be no issues with that. You just need to enable it. So
Quick questions here.
Sure, go ahead.
One here from John. How long does the calculation take over LMPP?
I believe if you're talking about looking at the global max power point, I believe it sweeps the production curve every 3 minutes to ensure that it's on the max power point possible.
Okay, and it says, I assume it takes more time to track the whole production values.
I'm not sure I follow the context of the question, but
Sure, we'll follow up with you, John, after.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to have a conversation about that.
Okay, thanks.
So another point is, if there is shade sitting on, even for an optimized panel, if there's shade sitting on it, then you're going to get the same production as if it was a string inverter. The only difference is once the shade starts to leave, that's when the optimizer starts to take effect. Because, I mean, anyone with any, experience in solar knows that shading doesn't actually kill an entire string. And that's because there are bypass diodes on the module, and the bypass diodes will cut out the strings that are underperforming. And so that work is actually done by the module itself through the bypass diodes, and no work is needed from an optimizer or an inverter. The actual effect is after the shade sweeps through, so if like a transient shadow like that chimney example, once the shade is gone, how does the system recover from the shaded scenario to make sure it's optimizing the production of the module? And that's what the dynamic peak manager is doing, is looking at the potential production once every 3 minutes to make sure that it's got the maximum power production out of the module. Like I said, the temperature range for Canadian climates operates down to -40 out of the box. And it also operates up to 60 degrees Celsius on the high temperature side. And if any of you have been in Canada like me for this past summer, we're getting mid 30s and high 30s on a more regular basis, unfortunately, and that that trend is not going to slow down over the coming years. So the reason we're able to perform in high temperature situations is because of the fans inside the inverter. So the fans drive cooling within the inverter and radiate the heat and convect the heat through fins on the back of the inverter. And so you'll get the best cold temperature and hot temperature performance out of Fronius, where we will start to derate at much higher temperatures than any of our competitors. You can also swap inverters quickly and easily. You can see the picture on the left-hand side shows the mounting bracket that I was showing in the image earlier. And at the bottom of the mounting bracket is the wiring terminal block. And so all of the wiring, DC, AC, all is done directly in the mounting bracket itself. What this means is, if you look at the picture on the right, the power stage, the inverter itself, has no direct connection to the wiring. And so in order to replace the inverter in case of a failure, all you need to do is throw the DC disconnect in the off position, loosen or remove 6 screws, pop the power stage off, pop the new power stage, the replacement back on, 6 screws back in, DC disconnect in the on position, and the system's back online. So it is by far the fastest and easiest inverter to service and replace out of any others in the industry. The inverters are actually also field serviceable. So we have all of the components on the inverter, all the boards are connected mechanically. They're not soldered or permanently fastened. And so what people can do is identify failures on the inverter in case of failures when they're called to do a service call. They can look at the components to see which components have failed and then replace the boards, the PCBs in the field, which hold the failed component. And so that the service is even faster and easier than replacing the power stage. In this case, the people who are able to do the field replacement of the boards are called FSPs, or Fronius Service Providers. They get 3 days of intense training where they basically break down the inverters to the bones and build them back up again, and walk through all the different failure modes, potential failure modes for the inverters during that process. So they understand all the different failure cases, how they happen, and they learn how to identify them. And they also purchase spare parts kits. So when they go to the field, if they're called to the field to do service, basically they can go identify the potential failure on the inverter, replace the board that's failed with one out of their spare parts kits, and get the inverter back online without doing a second truck roll, without getting a power stage to replace the existing one. So within one truck roll, they can do the entire service call and get the system back online right away. We have a number of FSPs in Ontario. We have FSPs in Saskatchewan, in Manitoba, and in Alberta, with more being trained hopefully soon in Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. So the FSP program is going nationwide. We're hoping to get as many as makes sense to make sure that our portfolio of inverters is properly serviced and supported with properly trained partners. We also have a rapid shutdown box, Duo and Quattro. This is especially relevant for single phase, primarily residential installations, where this will be low profile and can be mounted close to the array or under the modules. And it can do 2 strings in, 1 string out for the Duo, and the Quattro can take 2 to 4 strings in and 2 outputs. So if you want to use the 2 max power point trackers on the inverter, you would go with the Quattro and either do 2 strings in, 2 strings out, or 4 strings in, 2 strings out. And this is for 600 volts shutdown. The great thing about this product is it doubles as a combiner box. So it's actually ends up being a net cost savings when using this product instead of getting a separate rapid shutdown solution and a separate combiner box. We have 3 free monitoring platforms. We have Fronius SolarWeb, which we'll review at the end of this presentation, Fronius Solar TV, and the SolarWeb app. So Solar TV would be an example if you've got a high-profile customer, like a large retail customer, something who wants to have a lobby display showing the production and performance of their array. With a smart TV, they can connect to solar.tv and connect it that way. And the SolarWeb app is basically a representation of SolarWeb, but for a smart device. Fronius Monitoring. So monitoring is enabled via the Data Manager 2.0, which enables monitoring via LAN, wireless LAN, and Modbus options. It's a very simple communication setup using your laptop or smart device. And this enables all communication. One data manager is required per site. So if you've got one inverter or 100 inverters, you will only need one, up to a maximum of 100. Fronius Inverter Registration. This is a very important topic. So for anyone who's buying a Fronius inverter, we want to make sure you're getting the full 10-year warranty. And so when you register the inverter, the warranty starts from the date of installation, not the date of sale. And to specify here, for example, if BayWa buys a bunch of Fronius inverters and some of the last ones maybe sell 4, 5, 6 months from the date of sale, from the date that they purchased the inverter, then by the time you get it installed on your site, it could be another couple of months, maybe even up to a year. So that's automatically 6 months to 1 year of the warranty which has been lost. So when you register the inverter, what you're actually doing is informing us of the date of installation of the inverter with the registration process. And once the inverter is registered that way properly, then the warranty start date will be reset to the date of installation based on the registration. So that allows us to ensure you're getting the full 10-year warranty from the date of installation for the inverters that you install. All the warranty information can be found on SolarWeb. You can print warranty certificates on there as well and look at the warranty status to make sure that it's been processed properly. You can also clarify, it clarifies all ownership information when the inverter is registered, and it simplifies technical support because we can automatically identify the serial number of the inverter if it's been registered on the site. We have monitoring options as well for a full weather station. So we have sensors for ambient temperature, irradiance, module temperature, and wind speed to allow you to get weather station data on your installation site. We also have consumption monitoring via our smart meter. So the smart meter allows us to visualize the consumption and production of your system. And we'll go through the details of that when we look at SolarWeb. But all is to say, with a smart meter, it's a small cost to add the smart meter, and it allows you to visualize the entire energy flow. So all the power that's being generated from the PV array, all the power that's being consumed at the home, all the power that's being pulled from the grid. So you can have a full energy flow diagram and really understand your energy as it's moving on your property, or for your customer's property. And so the real value in that, say for example, on a net metering system, you can double check to make sure that your numbers for generation and consumption match the numbers from the utility company, and to make sure that you can really understand how the system is performing. There's also the possibility for feed-in regulation and dynamic power reduction. So if there's a site with, say, for example, limited export or zero export, that can be managed through these. So those are usually more in-depth conversations with utility companies, but those are systems that we have installed in a number of systems across the country. We also have regular training, usually 2 per month. We have many that are pre-recorded webinars as well, and some that we can do on demand. A lot of topics, the most common topics include installation, like best practices for installation, product training, commissioning, setting up communications, etc. For anyone who's looking at potential retrofits, most commonly happening in Ontario right now, but there's a lot also happening outside of Ontario. A lot of warranties are expiring on manufacturers who are no longer in Canada or in the market. So we can help with some string design or system design in consideration of the inverter to make sure that If you're just replacing the inverters, you can replace with Fronius, and we'll make sure that the system makes sense and that you'll get the best performance and production out of it. We can help with recommendations and design support as well. We're here to support for any of your needs, retrofit or otherwise. We've also got the solar online support tool. So what happens now, say for example, you're monitoring your system and you get an error code. You would look at the error code and then go to the inverter and say, okay, what do I do? I don't know. You got to look in the manual for the error code and see what the process is. What you'll probably do is call tech support, and tech support will give you a step-by-step problem resolution process. With the SOS tool, what you can do is put in the specifics of the inverter. So you put in the inverter itself and the serial number, and you would follow the same step-by-step process that you would get if calling tech support. So you don't have to wait. Maybe if tech support's not available or you're waiting for them to call you back, you can just open the SOS tool and go through the process. The really great thing about this is if you can't resolve the issue with the SOS tool and you do need to still call tech support, the SOS tool automatically creates a case for us in our system and shows us the steps that you've already completed. And so there'll be a lot of time saved because we know exactly what you've done already. And so we won't ask you to go through those same steps, and we can shorten the process substantially and get you more effective time with our tech support team. So there's a number of myths in the industry about Fronius. So here's some more information about sort of some of the myths and how true or untrue they are. So one thing people say, and I get this all the time, is designing a PV system with Fronius inverters is too complicated. And so what I will do here is open our solar configurator. So if you can see here, just on Google, just write solar configurator here. And this link here says fronius.com monitoring digital tools. Configure a PV system with ease, Fronius solar configurator. If you click on that link, it takes you to this page. Sorry, I've preloaded them because my internet can be a pain sometimes. And then on this page, scroll down a bit to see Solar Configurator 4.0. Click on that, and it comes to this page. And so here I've gone ahead and done a design, but basically just to walk you through exactly what I did here. First step, country, select Canada to make sure it's for Canada. Select the inverter that you're going to be using, so Primo, and then in this case I chose a Primo 7.6 for a residential install. Modules, I chose Hanwha Q cells. Q-Peak 450s because that's seems to be a very popular module these days. And the module temperature minimum and maximum, I put -30, and then the high temp on the high side 70 degrees because this is the module temperature, not ambient. An inverter ratio here, I put anywhere between 100 and 140, so that's the oversizing ratio. And then down here, you can see in this chart, it shows all of the different module counts. So you can see here, say for example, let's choose 20 modules. That gives us a DC power of 9 kilowatts peak with an inverter oversizing ratio of 116%. So in this case, we can look at all of the different string configurations to get us to 20 modules. So if you know you can fit 20 modules on your customer's roof, then this is the column for you. If you can only fit 18 modules, this is the column for you. If you can't fit 18, well, you need to pick a different inverter. And so if you want to fit, let's say 20, it's a nice round number. So your options are you could do one string of 15 and one string of 5, or a 14 and a 6. Or if you want symmetrical strings, you could do 2 strings of 10. So you have all the different options available here to you to make sure that you can do that. So let's assume we want to do, we have a smaller roof section and a larger roof section, so we'll do a string of 14 and a string of 6. So you can see here, if you click on that square, it'll take us to the summary showing the string details. So the per MPPT, what the production voltage, current, everything is on that with the module specs in consideration. And then if you click on create report here at the bottom, it'll automatically generate a PDF report for you with all of the string details, including the module specs. So you can see here, you set the project name if you'd like, and it shows you the module, model number, and all those details, and then the summary here, and then the performance for each MPPT. So that took a total of 5 minutes, and I took my time explaining it. It's usually a lot faster than that, especially if you use the tool once or twice before. You get the hang of it, and you can do a string design in less than a minute, typically. So that, I would say, is the first myth, is dispelled. Designing a PV system with a Fronius inverter is very easy and straightforward, and you even get a report to add to your files. Myth number 2, string inverters produce less kilowatt hours than module level power electronics like microinverters or optimizers. If you've got the microinverters or the optimizers, they're looking at individual module performance, and so you get better. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of data, and I mean, you can just go on Google and look at a whole bunch more data, but ultimately, this is just not true. The only time that a Fronius inverter will be outperformed by optimizers or microinverters is when the array is covered by snow. So that'll be January and February, where you're getting the least yield anyway. Otherwise, typically the production on the PV array is matched or exceeded by Fronius, and the total kilowatt hours generated in a year will be greater with a Fronius inverter than with microinverters or optimizers. Module level power electronics are safer. That's the next myth. And so one thing I always like to point out is that if you look at global numbers for failures on PV systems, or for fires on PV systems, number 1 and number 2, usually equally relevant, are power electronics and inverters, and connectors and terminals and junction boxes. So anywhere where there's connections. Those are the two that usually add up to about 50% of the cause of fires globally on PV systems, are connectors, terminals, junction boxes, and power electronics. And so you can automatically understand that if you've got optimizers or microinverters on the roof, you're increasing the quantity of power electronics by a wide margin. I mean, if you've got 1 optimizer per module or 1 microinverter for every 2 modules, that's, for 20 modules, that's 10 to 20 additional components on the roof. Also, if you look at the module level power electronics, the number of connection points is at a minimum typically doubled, if not tripled, compared to a string inverter solution. So by trying to make the system safer, you're actually increasing the 2 leading factors of fires and failures on a PV system with the number of power electronics and the number of connections on the array. One other myth that people believe is that they need module level monitoring to make sure the modules aren't failing and that they're working properly. And so again, anyone who's been in the industry longer than, I'd say, a year or 2 years should know that modules are probably the last component to fail on a PV array. Maybe the racking lasts a bit longer, but the modules last forever. I mean, there's modules installed in the country that have been installed since the 70s and are still outputting power. Maybe not 100% or 80%, but they're still working and they're still in working condition. If there are issues with the PV modules, and they're few and far between, usually they'll appear within the first months of installation, and they'll be irrelevant from there. So when you're putting a power electronic device to monitor the module, what you're actually doing is putting a device which is going to monitor itself. Because over the 20-year life of the system, any power electronics, whether it's string inverters or microinverters or optimizers, they will fail at some point. And so you'll see probably at least 1 to 3 failures on the device itself before you would ever see any failure on a module. If there are failures, and like I said, they're few and far between, there's very easy processes to identify which string and then do a rule of halves to identify which modules are affected on the string. So finally, how much does this really cost? So upfront, we know that microinverters and optimized solutions are more expensive than string inverters. That's not in question. So the real question is, what about the long-term cost of ownership? If you're adding all of these components, you're adding all these points of failure. And all things being equal, I never like to say anything bad about my competitors. They make great products and everything. And so assuming all things are equal and their failure rates are the exact same as Fronius's failure rates, they will eventually fail. All power electronics fail. An inverter or a microinverter or an optimizer is the same as your TV or your laptop or your cell phone. They will fail at some point. That's just the function of them. So whether you're buying a Fronius or anyone else, you probably will see a failure over the 20 years. Now, what's the most important thing is if you do see a failure, and that being said, we have inverters, a large number of inverters that have been operating in Canada for 10 plus years, even some that were purchased before Fronius Canada existed, that have not had a single failure. So beyond that, so whether it's 5, 10, or 20 years from the install, no power electronics will last forever. That's the fundamental. So with Fronius string inverters, that eventual failure can be replaced very quickly and easily, whether it's under warranty or not, based on what I said before. You can swap the power stage and get a new power stage to replace it, or get the components replaced by an FSP. And so these are the examples that I like to give if you've got microinverters or optimizers. So if one unit goes down, your customer gets on the phone with you kicking and screaming, this is down, it's not operating, this inverter or this module is not producing, please get out here and fix it. So in a live, if I was sitting with you in the same room, I would ask you, how much do you think this service call would cost? Because I typically like to know from your experience. And so I have done that in the past, and the answer typically is around $250 to $300, because you got to get up on the roof with a ladder, remove 2 modules to replace that failed component and get the modules back on. Time consuming, you charge the customer, then you go on. Whatever period of time later, this module fails. Well, now you can access it easier, but you still got to get up on the roof to get that failed point. And your customer is kicking and screaming, and you're saying, should I wait till more fail, or should I get out there and appease my customer? Eventually you get out there, another, let's say $200 to $250 for this truck roll that your customer is going to be paying for. Then, pardon me, I'm just going to drink some water. Okay, so then these two fail. So now you've got 2 different roof surfaces. They're both relatively easy to access, but still it's a lot more time. You gotta get up on 2 separate roofs here. So let's say this is $350 to $400. But your customer's bugging you, they want you to get out. You want to wait for more, but your customer doesn't want to wait. So that's more cost and pain in the butt for you and your customer. Then at one point this happens, because they don't all fail at the same time, unfortunately. They can pick and choose when they'd like to fail. So I want you to think about, if a customer called you with this failure mode and asked you to come do a service call to replace them, how much do you think this would actually cost? I usually get estimates around $1,000 to $1,200 on the conservative side, and I don't want to let you know what it is on the liberal side, but probably $900 to $1,200 cost to your customer. I know there's some free replacements and maybe a little bit of service reimbursement from my competitors, but I don't think it's enough to cover how much this is going to cost. Your customer is not going to be happy with the cost of this. And this is how unpredictable it is, right? You don't know if and when they'll fail, and if they do fail, how nice they'll be to you when they do. So again, assuming Fronius fails in the exact same failure mode, once in a while, maybe you get 1 or 2 failures over the 20-year life of the system. You walk up to the inverter on the side of the house or in the garage. You turn the DC disconnect, pop out 6 screws, replace the power stage with the new one, put the 6 screws back on, DC disconnected in the on position. That's $150 to $200 service call for your customer, once, maybe twice over the 20-year life of the system. Then you have a better reputation or relationship with your customer. You get word of mouth references from them for their neighbors and friends who want to do solar, and you have a better general reputation with that. So if you consider the long-term cost of ownership, lower cost for O&M, lower cost upfront, local tech support in Canada, the SOS tool, the Fronius service providers across the country, install, service, warranty claims are all streamlined and all simplified and all honored through your Canadian Fronius partner. The warranty product is not coming from the US or from Europe or from China or from Mexico. It's inventoried here in Canada to support your needs. So swap the inverter quickly and easily. You've got all of these great benefits with Fronius. Keep it simple and avoid the headaches. Stick with the easy to replace inverters and keep yourself happy, keep your business happy, keep your customers happy. So I'll jump to the SolarWeb live demo now. And then that's pretty much it. So I'm definitely open to any questions that you've got at this point while we look at SolarWeb. And so SolarWeb is the monitoring platform for Fronius, and it's free. And so what you can do if you'd like to show it to your customers to help them understand the capabilities, you can go to solarweb.com like this, and then click on View Demo. Oh, I think because I'm logged in, it won't let me. But there's a number of sites on SolarWeb, like demo sites, where you can look at what the system looks at. If you look at the Madrid site in particular in Spain, it'll show you what we're going to look at. So I like to show two examples. The first example I'll show is Caledonia Solar. So this is SolarWeb with a Fronius inverter and a data manager. So here you've got the current power. You can see here is basically 52 kilowatts, which is 52% utilization. Obviously, that means that this is a 100 kilowatt system. Energy balance today, we've gotten 141 kilowatts off of this system. And if you click on energy balance today, so I want you also to pay attention to this current power diagram. Basically just shows the inverter, it shows the percent utilization, and of course the dark yellow area is the percentage and kilowatts being produced at the moment. So if we look at energy balance today and click on the words at the top, we can look at historic data. So we can see here, this is the PV production for the day. We can go back to yesterday to see what it was like. And obviously that was a beautiful production day for Caledonia Solar. Started right in the morning. Apparently it's oversized nicely, so you're going to get nice early production of PV, and then you're going to cap out at around 11:30, and it's going to be max production until somewhere around 4 o'clock, and then it starts to ramp down as the sun goes down, and then the production is done. That's a great example of a simple SolarWeb site with the data manager and the inverter registered on there. And you can see here for yesterday, 858 kilowatt hours were produced. Now, if we go back to the main page on SolarWeb, let's look at another site here called Johnson Solar in Manitoba. So now you can see here under current power, we're no longer seeing just the PV inverter. Now we're seeing the entire energy flow diagram. And that's because Johnson Solar has a smart meter installed. And what the smart meter is doing is feeding the data manager all of the consumption data off of the main service panel. So the smart meter is connected with CTs to the main service panel and measures the current coming off of the main service line into your service panel on the residential installation or commercial installation. It works for commercial systems as well. And so now you can look at the net data between the PV generation and the energy consumption of the property to understand all of the energy as it's flowing to and from the property. So here in this case, this customer has a very aggressive net metering contract, and so he has a very oversized system. So it is a 45 kilowatt system, which is 3 15 kilowatt inverters on these three sections of the array. And so 45 kilowatts is currently being produced. It's a very sunny day at the moment. in Manitoba, and so he's getting 100% generation of the array. The system is 100% self-sufficient because it is being serviced completely by the PV generation at the moment. The consumption, the property is currently consuming 6.55 kilowatts, which is supplied entirely by your PV production. And so the net, which is 38.8 kilowatts, is currently being fed back to the grid, where he's being paid on his net metering contract. So if you look here now, you can see the chart is even different because now you have a gray area below the zero line, which is showing the consumption. So this chart is now a net chart of generation and consumption, as opposed to just showing you the simple generation off of the array. So now if we click on energy balance today, we get a lot more detailed information. We can see the gray area up here is the total PV production at the top and the power that's being fed to the grid. The blue line is the consumption, and the yellow area is the consumption which is being serviced by the generation from the PV array. Again, we can look back to previous days and whatever period since the registration of the system. So that was a tumultuous day. Let's try to find a nice sunny day. Oh, that's a good one too. You can see all the varied production here. Looks like it was a bit of a cloudy day, so the max PV generation was somewhere around 18 kilowatts, 18 or 19. So what we can actually do is, and this is enabled by SolarWeb Premium, and so I'll jump in to say this really quickly. For anyone who's registering for SolarWeb, for you or for your customers, make sure to quote unquote buy SolarWeb Premium. It is a very expensive cost of $0, but you do have to click on buy and then confirm the purchase at $0. It's free, and it allows you to look at historical data since the installation of the PV system. So here, for example, we can look at 2020. We'll go to August a year ago, August 25th. So you can see here it says premium. So when you buy premium for $0, then you get access to the historical information all the way back to the installation of the array. And so we can look a year ago on August 25th, it was also a bit of a cloudy day, but still good PV production.
Bilal, John is asking, will it always be free?
For the time being, yes. There's always been, and so I'll tell you, I joined Fronius 4.5 years ago, and at the time I had been given indication that at some point SolarWeb Premium will not be free, and they don't have a date for that yet. And so that's still the information that I get now 4.5 years later. So for the foreseeable future, yes, it will be free. And if there is a cost, I expect it should be somewhere around $3 or $4 a month. And that's a liberal estimate. So I don't think it's going to be, if it's not free, again, you have access to all this data, just not all the historical data. But if it does become a cost, again, it won't be this year or next year. And so at the very least through the end of 2022, there will not be a cost for SolarWeb Premium. That concludes my presentation. Again, thank you very much for your time. I hope you learned some things, and I hope you you picked up some new information about Fronius and about PV generation and PV systems in general. Let me know, please, if you have any more questions. I'm happy to answer them.
So I don't see any more, Bilal, so thank you very much for the presentation and spending some time with us. Continuing education is a big thing here at BayWa for our staff as well as our customers, so thank you, everyone. Just to let you know, this has been recorded once again. This will come out in the September newsletter. If you need a copy earlier, please reach out to one of your outside sales reps. If you need any documentation, I'd just like to recommend that you go over to the web shop. You can find, once your account's set up over there, you can see the price, the inventory, the spec sheets, the install manuals, the warranty docs, it's all there. So great resource for you. And if you have any additional questions, please reach out to your representatives. Thanks so much, everybody, and hope you're all taken care of there.
Okay, and I'll jump in to say thanks again to all of you for your time and for participating. Thank you so much, BayWa, for hosting. BayWa is a really fantastic partner for us, and we're very happy to have this opportunity to present alongside you. If there's any other questions, BayWa usually has the answer. I'm always available as well if you need me. And for any pricing questions or anything, please refer to your BayWa rep, and they'll be happy to provide you with that.
Thanks, Bilal.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day. And I'll stick around for a few more minutes in case someone has any more questions.